Storm is probably one of the most well known designations of mutant. For a lot of people who are casual comic enjoyers, she is the Omega level mutant. But how does that stack up in a world that's laced with Chronovium? If Chronovium can make mortals and bullets strong enough to put down Asgardians with ease, does Omega level mutant really mean that much? Or is Storm outpaced in this new environment? Spoiler alert, no. No, she is not. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Riddler, wrong universe, I know. And this is Marvel Rivals Season 1 character profile for Ororo Munroe, aka Storm. So, when it comes to Storm, there are a few people quite as well known and powered as her. On top of being one of the most classic X-Men, she's also seemingly endlessly powerful and forgiving. Marvel Rivals stays true to this in its depiction of her. Storm is naturally gifted by her X gene to feel even the tiniest swirls and changes in the environment. However, Storm is also a very busy woman. She is sitting on the Quiet Council of Krakoa and the Great Ring of Araco. The Quiet Council is probably easy for you to assume what exactly it is. It's the silent but ruling party of the mutants on Krakoa, comprised mostly of X-Men that lead Krakoa as a nation and act as its governing body. Araco is actually quite the same. For those who don't know, Krakoa is a living island, and much like its cousins that it allows to live on its surface, Krakoa is a mutant. And Krakoa, being a mutant island, is actually a large reason why mutants are so safe there. But Krakoa was not the only living mutant island. It essentially had a twin named Araco that broke off of it in sort of a Pangea situation. Due to some meddling and nefariousness from Apocalypse that we won't get into here, Araco ended up on Mars with a large chunk of the quote-unquote original mutant population. Through a dicey chain of events, Storm found herself on Mars with these mutants, and eventually, like most mutant communities, they elect the goddess to be one of their ruling bodies. All of that to say, Storm is very busy when the time stream entanglement happens, but eventually the disaster takes precedence over bureaucracy. From Storm's perspective, we get to see the time stream entanglement splinter reality. Trees grow hundreds of feet tall, insects move through millions of lifespans in the time it takes her to exhale. The stars in the sky shift so dramatically that she doesn't recognize them. Plants all around her grow, bloom, and die in an instant. And then, a pretty important bit, if you ask me, Storm sees Araco and Krakoa appear before her, almost as if they are molding into each other, overlapping and hybridizing. Storm then notes another thing. The harder the wind seems to blow, the faster things seem to transform. She even spots tiny slivers of a strange material that, when they collide with her, seem to hinder her ability to locate herself in space and time. Then Storm has a realization. This is a storm. A hailstorm, a maelstrom on a galactic warping level, but that means nothing to Ororo Munroe. No matter the size, no matter the ferocity, if this was a storm, it would bend to her will just like all the rest of the storms. Guided by her well-trained instinct, Storm reaches out and feels the pain and fear in both Araco and Krakoa as the twin islands meld together. Storm then feels how this time storm is twisting and bending together reality itself, and for a moment, she understands the mechanics of how that's happening. And in the same way that electricity crackles around her body in the atmosphere when she wills it, so too does space and time. And as it does, she feels a million different versions of herself from a million different realities, but they do not even faze her. She had understood this storm, and that meant her control of it was a matter of diligence. As she began to quiet it, she also understood the boundaries of her storm may be beyond her total control. But over this one small part of Krakoa and Araco, she could and would exert her influence. She began to guide both Krakoa and Araco through the currents of the storm and thusly through time. Gradually, she channels the time storm, and until the two islands are separated. As they do separate, Storm watches more of these strange crystals fall to the ground across the island's surface. In the ensuing chaos, the two places had gotten so mixed together that Storm was no longer on Mars/Arakko. She was once again on the island of Krakoa. Storm then thinks a flurry of questions. How did she get teleported between planets? Was Arakko even okay? Was this the right timeline to be in? And who in the hell caused that storm? She even muses that when in the eye of the Tempest, it may have been more powerful than her contact with the Phoenix Force. I'm going to say that again. Storm says it may have been more powerful than her contact with the Phoenix Force. I've mentioned the Phoenix Force a couple of times, and I think people would probably know it best as being an entity that is hosted inside of Jean Grey. But if you don't know what exactly the Phoenix Force is, it is the totality of life energy across the multiverse. That means their universe, the MCU, the DC universe, our universe. The Phoenix Force is representative of all of the life energy across everything. It is the collection of the collective life energy. And Storm feels the time string entanglement and goes, that might have been stronger than the Phoenix Force. That is insanity. I cannot overstate what that implies. And Storm does not strike me as the type of person. I mean, she could be wrong, I suppose, but she probably isn't, right? Like, she probably knows what the hell she's talking about. And if you continue to think about it along that train of thought, we have seen Loki get a power up from Chornovium. We've seen Hela get a power up from Chornovium. We've seen Thor and Mjolnir get power ups from Chornovium. This shit is so strong. It's so powerful. It's so potent. And I think as the story continues, it's just going to get more and more and more obvious. And I'm personally waiting for like Chronovium poisoning or something like that, you know what I mean? Because as Storm does realize the flakes of crystals that lay thick on the ground like a mineral made of time, she doesn't know what this is, but we know for sure that it's Chronovium. And implicitly, since we had that scene earlier in her story in the midst of the storm, how the tiny slivers of material were hitting her skin and dissipating, and they were making it hard for her to place where she was in time and space. It kind of messed with her senses, but it dissipated as it hit her. And I think this is when Chronovium like infused in Storm. I think it has bled into her. It has almost certainly affected her X gene and almost certainly affected her powers. And I feel like it is a fair leap in logic to assume that this is how it worked for everybody. Everyone who was embroiled in the time stream entanglement, even if they, didn't know how to get themselves out of it, like how Storm did, they probably got infused with Chronovium at that moment. Because when Thor is captured by Loki and he calls Mjolnir to him, he is surprised to see that Mjolnir is laced with Chronovium. So it's not that like this is an active process, it just happens and suddenly these things have Chronovium in them. And I think through Storm's story, we see what it looks like when that happens. But back on topic, back to Storm. There's only a little bit left. She then decides that both Xavier and Magneto need to be briefed on whatever the hell just happened. But Xavier should probably know first if Storm can find him. So that was wild as hell. That's her whole story, right? I cannot wait until we get more X-Men so we can get more story on what the hell is going on Krakoa and on Arakko. I think that this story makes a very specific reference to the idea that people from Arakko could also now be on Krakoa and vice versa. And on top of that, Storm says that she wants to tell Xavier first, but the next time we see her in the lore chapters is in Magneto's chapter, and they're on Krakoa. So did she find Magneto first? Have they found Xavier off screen and managed to talk to him, or do they just not know where Charles is? He could be on Araco. I've been thinking we'll get a Krakoa map. Maybe we'll get an Araco map. I don't even know at this point. On top of that, we explicitly get that scene of Chornovium in its most volatile form during the midst of the storm, and it hits like rain hitting a sponge. So one would have to assume, similar to Loki and Thor and Hela on Yggdrasil, that this infused Storm with even more power and more Chronovium. So who knows what the upper limits of Storm's powers are right now? Because they were already astronomical, right? But she's got to be even stronger now because she's basically got soaked in a Chronovium hailstorm. But this is leaning real hard into my ever-growing theory of how Chronovium is working and how this game is working. But all of those things are admittedly for a different video. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. If you like the video, and maybe think about dropping a subscribe if you've been around for the past couple of videos. We just recently hit over 100 subscribers, which is amazing to me. All of this progress on this channel is coming from January. It's just coming from January, and it's coming from Marvel Rivals. I've gone from like 6 subscribers to 100, and I know there are a lot of YouTubers out there with way more, but that's super fucking exciting for me. I appreciate it so much. I'm loving going through this game, and I'm so glad that you all are enjoying it, and hopefully you stick around. So maybe drop a comment, drop a subscribe. Let's fucking chat, dude. This game's cool, and I'm really glad to be going through it. And until the next time that I see all of you lovely people, drink some water, wash your hands, tell someone you love that you love them, and be good people.